which the leaves of deciduous trees change color and fall off each year. This is for all you scientists out there. Apparently, this process has a name. Does anyone know what it is?
Fall.
No. It's a good guess. It's called abscission. Everybody say abscission. Abscission. So abscission is where the leaves turn color and fall off, and it occurs right in the fall. There you go, Scott. When the hours of sunlight per day decrease enough that it becomes too costly for trees to continue to sustain the machinery of growth that they have going on during the summer. The green chlorophyll, remember that from 7th grade biology, that has been working overtime all summer, converting sunlight into energy, starts to break down, and the other colors, which are already present in the leaves, can suddenly be seen because they're no longer hidden by the color of the chlorophyll. Except for red leaves, which is a totally different process, and we don't have time for that today. I'm sorry, just Wikipedia it. So the chlorophyll takes a break and the new colors emerge, and subsequently the tree weakens the connection between the stem of the leaf and the branch, gradually severing it from its supply of water, and so the leaf dries up and falls off. Now, within just a few hours of that, the tree releases certain kind of substances to heal the scar left by that departed leaf. Now, I know you're wondering, Liz, how does the tree grow new leaves? I know, you're right with me. Don't leave us hanging. I'm going to tell you, this is a really interesting part. The buds of the new leaves are actually already there when abscission happens. Here's what May writes about it. Even as the leaves are falling, the buds of next year's crop of leaves are already in place, waiting to erupt again in spring. Most trees produce their leaf buds in the height of summer, and the autumn leaf fall reveals them, neat and expectant, protected from the cold by thick scales. Now, we rarely notice them because we think we are seeing the skeleton of a tree, a dead thing, until the sun returns. But look closely, and every single tree is in bud. From the sharp talons of the beech to the hoof-like black buds of the ash. The tree is waiting. It is far from dead. It is, in fact, the life and soul of the wood. It's just getting on with it quietly. The tree will not burst to life in the spring. It will simply put on a new coat and face the world again. And all that seems just kind of magical to me, to think that the tree had thought of all this before. And then it's not such as we think, just standing around waiting for growth to begin, but it really has already been on the journey to become what it will become. And it's simply waiting for the perfect time to bloom. Now, May, the author, uses this process as a way to talk about how our souls endure the various winters that come our way in life, assuring us that our dark nights of uncertainty and trial already have within them the potential for, but really the promise of, new growth. But I think abscission is also an excellent starting point for talking about the springs of our lives, the times of emergence. It's comforting, I think, to consider that as we are becoming what we are called to become, we're not really starting from scratch. Because what we're meant to be is already there within us and has been there for some time. We simply must have the courage to let go of what no longer serves us, to employ patience in waiting for the right time, and to allow what is already latent within us to bloom. And now I imagine a few of you are thinking, that's such a nice message for the graduates today, isn't it? And yes, graduates, it's a salient thing for you to consider as you make your way into a new chapter of life, that God has already been growing in you that which you will become. That you have unique gifts and experiences and wisdom that will blossom as you continue to move into your adult life. But actually, this message is not for you. Maybe a little bit, but not really. It's for all these other folks who are, let's say, more chronologically advanced than you are. And I want you all to note that you will note, okay, a tree does not go through abscission one time. Have you ever noticed that? It doesn't change colors and drop its leaves one time. It's a cycle that repeats itself over and over and over and over and over again. Have you noticed that as you look out your window in the changing seasons? It goes on and on as the tree grows. In fact, it's part of what allows a tree to grow. And though I think we love metaphors like this about change and transformation, we tend to want to exempt ourselves from the constancy of them. Like sometimes I think we want to imagine that growing up is a process that ends. Maybe on some day when you wear a mortarboard and hear pomp and circumstance. But really the spiritual life invites us to a different perspective wholly. It invites us to believe that, namely, that growing up is a process that continues for our whole life. We continue growing, hopefully. We continue learning and changing and becoming what God has been calling us to be. Though certainly there are fewer outward milestones as we age, we do graduate our whole life long. Graduate from Latin gradus, a step climbed, or a step toward something. Of course, sometimes we graduate from academic pathways, yes, but more often it's from one form of life into another. For instance, from academia and into our work, or from singlehood into partnership, or from a more individual life to a life of vocational expression or caretaking. We can graduate from, let's call it active parenting, into parenting from a distance when our kids leave home. Or maybe we've moved from having a spouse to not having one anymore because of divorce or death. Or maybe we've gone from working time into retirement, or from middle age to the limitations of older age. We keep moving and keep taking steps. And the wisdom of our faith tells us that at each turn we have this opportunity to have faith that we are still becoming. And that who we are becoming is already inside of us. If we can just let go, live patiently, and then lean in. Now I'm going to be a little bit vulnerable with you here today and say this is something that came as a huge surprise to me as I entered middle age. For some reason when I was younger, I thought the whole middle of life would be like one completely flat, slightly boring plateau. Having decided what my vocation was and what my family configuration would be like, I envisioned it would just be smooth sailing with static me at the helm. I don't know why I thought that. Maybe it's that I perceive my parents to be static individuals, but now I know, both from personal experience and from working with people of all ages for so long, this is so far from the truth, right? I am still figuring things out and learning and growing. I'm still figuring out what I want to be and who I want to be when I grow up, what I'm meant to be in each season. And I'm still on the move from one part of life to the next. And it's so much more dynamic than I anticipated. And the folks that I see just ahead of me, they are absolutely exploding with spiritual growth at the later stages of life. Coming to new perspectives and ideas and wisdom and new awareness of how God is at work in and around them. They may not get a balloon arch very often, but let me tell you, it is an exciting thing and something to celebrate. And if you need to see some precedents for this, you'll notice that Jesus is going through this process when you read the gospel. This story that we just heard is kind of right at the beginning of his ministry. It makes sense, but you see this all the way through. He's kind of negotiating what it means to become himself, right? He's transitioning from his identity within a family to a more public role. And people, his mom particularly, have some feelings about that. He's moving from being a practitioner of the faith to being a leader, and the existing authority has some feelings about that, right? He's grappling with it. It's a struggle. He's making meaning in trying to become who we know, if we've read the story whole, he already is, if that makes any sense. Testing out ways and metaphors for understanding himself at each stage of his journey. And I guess my intent here today is simply just to normalize that and to name it. And to invite each of us to let it inform our own self-perception, this idea of ongoing development, transformation. Maybe you want to ask yourself this question now or at some future point: what am I becoming right now? What am I becoming right now? Am I graduating in some way from one identity to another? And if I am, can I believe that God has already put within me what I need to bloom in this time? What am I becoming right now? So I just want to highlight that and then say, and perhaps this part is for you graduates, this is such an exciting time of life. There's just music popping out from places to celebrate you guys. You are so full of potential, and this is just the beginning, right? But it's not the end. You never fully graduate from graduating, from taking steps, or from the process of becoming, which is the reason, and I'll admit this is a little bit of a sales pitch, which is the reason that we invite you not to graduate from church. You know, we used to talk about Christian education as though it had some end point. Like once you learned the Apostles' Creed and could name most of the 4 Gospels, you were good. Congratulations. But really, this community is meant to be a companion and a resource and a circle of care on this lifelong journey. You know, look around, you see all these people. They're not here because they failed some portion of their senior year of spiritual growth, and we didn't let them leave. They're here because they know the value of a community of mutuality and spiritual support as they go through the winters and the springs and the summers and the autumns that go on in a cycle and make up our lives. We are here for each other. We're here for you today in a visible way, but we'll continue to be here as you move over other important but less pompy thresholds. And that's a word that's really important, thresholds. Maybe this will be my last thought before we move on. Ritual theorists tell us that many human rituals exist and always have because there's some risk of getting lost, spiritually at least, as we pass over the thresholds from one identity and into another. It's why we have rites of passage and coming of age ceremonies, and why we do weddings in church and funerals too. There should be some structure as we pass over the threshold. And there's this idea that there should be community around to face the mystery together and hold space for it. And to make sure there are folks on one side sending you through and folks on the other side beckoning you forth so that you know that you are not alone and so you won't get lost. Because your community is there and so is God. And both of them are eager to see what awaits you on the other side and how you will bloom in the season to come. So those are my invitation for all of you graduates this morning and people passing through the season of life. May God be with us as we walk step by step.